So my name is Randy Sargent. I'm a researcher at Carnegie Mellon's CREATE Lab. Yeah, so it happened kind of gradually. I was really interested in the idea of building a robot as a junior high and high school, and started trying different aspects of that. The microcomputer revolution happened when I was in high school, so I got good at the software side of things, and then Lego started coming out with gears. So I started building those two pieces separately. I built mechanical things that would walk, but I didn't manage to connect those two until later when I was an undergraduate. Over time, I worked on educational robotics. I worked on a robot contest that we had at MIT, working first on kind of software only, and then software connected to hardware. So people were building robots out of Lego blocks that would compete, and that kind of turned into work with Lego Mindstorms, with the Lego company. Soon after that, I started working with a friend of mine who became my wife on machine vision, and we started working on ways for robots to better understand the world, and then that kind of evolved into industrial automation and agricultural automation, so doing things like inspecting parts or sorting blueberries or things of that nature. I guess I don't know how far to go, but that's kind of how I got started, and that was kind of the peak was when we had started a company, making machine vision systems. Yeah, I think the initial obsession with robots came from Star Wars. I was 10 when Star Wars came out, and kind of the idea of robots as being characters in the movie, and it's I want to make one of those. In high school, as I got better with software, I started working on ways to apply automation. So I rewrote the scheduling software that our high school used to schedule 1,000 students into classes, to kind of better optimize that. So it was trying to take tedious work and do it better than a person might do. So kind of the idea of automating and saving people work was high on my list at that point. Yeah, I mean it was interesting because when I first started programming, there were things I was just doing for fun because you start off and not capable enough to do something that's actually useful yet. But very soon, when I started getting into situations where I could do something that was useful, I think that any high school student, it's certainly the ones that I interact with today, are very attuned to ways that they can contribute that are valued, right? It's the classwork, you might get feedback from a teacher who says that's good work. Not everyone will get that feedback. But to be able to actually contribute and be able to say, okay, this is something that I can get paid for. This is something that will help other people. I think that my idea of what helping other people look like has evolved over time. But certainly in high school, the driver was, wow, look at these things that I can do to help others.
Yeah, it's an interesting leap from kind of the fictional idea of the droid, right, to actually having this social contract.
Yeah. And it was, I think I lucked out in a sense because the thing that I really wanted to learn turned out to be really economically useful. Mm-hmm. So as the company that I'd started with my friend grew, and as we started doing more automation, I got cold feet. So we were automating the sorting of blueberries according to whether they're ripe or not on a big machine, using the machine vision to kind of sort them according to individual blueberries and how ripe they were. And I ended up coming to the conclusion that we weren't actually helping the majority of the people who were engaged there. So the owner of the blueberry farm put us in the same big warehouse with people. So we were side by side. We had an automated line running right next to the human line. And I ended up, I think, having two things came out of that. One was the sense that we weren't helping all the people who had that job. We were helping the owner. But the other is that my impression of the job that we were automating, like who would want to spend time sorting blueberries? That sounds horrible. Well, it would be more correct to say I didn't want to sort blueberries. It didn't sound like a job I wanted. But the people there who were doing it were enjoying themselves. They were talking among themselves. It didn't look like they were unhappy about the job, but they were certainly concerned about the machine that we had placed next to them, with the intention of taking their job. So from there, I followed my wife to work at NASA and work on space exploration robots, which seemed like a good application of the things that we had learned. So working on adding autonomy to Mars rovers. But once again, I kind of ran straight into, we were using a code base that was also used in the DARPA Grand Challenge for navigating cars. And I drew a line on working on robots that were related to the defense industry, and I guess had increasing difficulty seeing, well, how can I work on robots that aren't contributing to war or reducing jobs? And I kind of ended up, so today I don't actually work on artificial intelligence. It's easy to look back and kind of say, this is the moment I made the decision.
Sure.
But I think that it didn't hit me like a bolt out of the blue, like, oh, this is the wrong thing, and I wake up tomorrow and change what I'm doing. It was more the kind of the motivation, the original idea of getting into it was no longer being satisfied. If anything, like in aspects, it looked like we were having a negative effect. And at least my experience of that is it takes a while for that to grow. And I can go back in time and say that was a red line, but at the time it was a slow process. Kind of from that experience, it was another year before I left the company that we had started.
Yeah, but it sounds like there was an intuitive discomfort that evolved over time.
I think that's right.
And also a realization of that kind of social contribution.
I think that's fair. I think that it's sometimes, when you know how to do a certain thing, it's you go around looking for, well, how can I apply my skills? And you might have like an overly rosy idea of how this is going to work out. And sometimes we need to kind of reach beyond kind of our own experiences to understand better how that impact's going to be. Actually, why was it that the first time like I actually saw someone sorting a blueberry was after we'd been developing the system for a year? Why wouldn't I have gone and actually observed that process first? And that was something I took away from that experience. Like don't have the arrogance to imagine that the way you see things is the way that everyone sees it. One of the things that we see today is an increasing prevalence of information that's being collected, that's being analyzed, and one of the things that I try to work on is be able to take data and understandings from the data and be able to democratize that somewhat, to be able to bring that to people who might be kind of on the wrong end of the pyramid, kind of invert the power structure. It's tough because I think we see more and more today that information is used in ways that aren't necessarily to the individual's advantage. So trying to push back a little bit the other direction. One in particular that we've just had a big release with. We work on cameras that allow monitoring pollution. So these cameras are monitoring 24/7 the skies to look for haze, but also to look for particular emissions from sites that might be driving the pollution. And having that sort of information, like where's the pollution coming from, why is it coming from, I think having that information in the public sphere, transparent, is important for democracy to be able to work, to be able to have a conversation about, well, how important is it to have clean air? Like, how does that, connect to the health of my kids or something of that nature? Because I think what we found kind of before is that it was really hard to find out, where's the pollution coming from. You had kind of actors who might know more, but might be economically motivated not to be transparent with it. So transparency and making the information available to everyone seems like an important ingredient. So I think there have been some good books that have come out, and I think that even for people who don't read the books, there are kind of all these attendant media that happens around book tours and talks and TED Talks and things like that. Like some good examples, the second machine age, robot futures, the weapons of math destruction, I think are three good examples. That I think dive in some depth, and also have again, for people who don't bother to read it, there's enough other things kind of happening around them that I think that they're useful vehicles for communicating to the public. Yeah, so I try to kind of tell my story about why I kind of turned away from developing AI. But I don't tell it very broadly, so I'll tell that one-on-one or in a small group. One of the tools that we work on together in lab is the ability to map things that are changing in the world. So to be able to show visualizations of how the world changes, physically, environmentally, but also economically and demographically. And I feel like one of my responsibilities would be to be able to show some of the human dimension of the impacts today from automation and historically what's been happening so far. And I feel that's a responsibility that I want to do a better job of executing on. So the tools tend to show trends over time by showing a time lapse of sorts. So if you're looking at something physical, like maybe the Amazon rainforest, you might be looking at a top-level view, kind of like Google Maps, but this is animating as the cities grow, as the farms grow, as the forest shrinks. And there's a certain way sometimes when you watch something at a different speed and watch something at a different spatial scale, that you can start to gain insights. You start to see trends in a way that speaks to kind of your intuitive self. So as we have been expanding into things beyond kind of the physical world, looking at economics and demographics, we have very powerful maps today that show displacement of people, whether it's displacement of people from country to country because of war, or displacement of people because of gentrification inside a city. I don't think we yet have good maps that show impact of automation. So the sorts of things I was seeing kind of in the Blueberry warehouse, I don't think we communicate that very well yet, and that's something I want. So looking into the future is something I want to be able to do. The things that you see, kind of the job descriptions that go away, as we have kind of, automated systems that move information around, secretaries, there are many fewer secretaries today than there were decades ago. And is that AI? Well, I mean, there's some aspects of it, right? It's like if you're looking at the email coming in and kind of sorting what's useful and what's not, what's spam or not, there's a lot of AI being applied there. And there are examples like that, whole kind of job descriptions going away. I think there's kind of a bigger picture as we start to have these information systems that ever more are able to cope with the complexity, say, of a massive distribution center system. Whether it's the big box stores or now Amazon, there's a benefit to scaling up the size of a company, because the information systems that you build naturally clone and scale. Unlike people, where you have to pay more every person you hire. And what we see from that, I think, is kind of this increase in scale that removes people from where the decisions happen, and have effects like there are many fewer companies being started today. The smaller companies are at a relative disadvantage. I mean, if you look at the trends of scaling up, if you look at kind of the organizations that are investing the most into AI, the trend of investments are being rewarded. So if you look at Google's investment into AI, it's being rewarded. If you look at kind of the reward of scaling up companies, these are trends that don't look like they're going to stop. So unfortunately, they turn into vehicles not only to kind of remove control from kind of the leaves of the organization, which is where most people are, but to increase inequality as well, because you have kind of the most valuable part of the pyramid is up at the top, and that's where the resources end up. I mean, there's so many. I mean, if you look at kind of power structures, and I've reflected a number of times, like, why did the owner of that farm put us right next to the operating line? Couldn't we have found another room or something? And it's clear that it wasn't only about are we going to be able to replace this job, but it was also about an ongoing labor negotiation. It was also about it's like, here's we have more control than you think we have. We're asserting our control over you, and it's so just increasing kind of the disparities between the control and the people who don't have the control by itself historically has been a problem, and we're seeing that. I think there's another aspect. I was talking to an Uber driver, actually a Lyft driver, who was kind of talking about what it's like to spend a day, kind of at the behest of the computer, saying, okay, this is where you need to go, this is what you need to do. And he said that there were kind of 2 discretionary trips he could take a day. So he could basically say, I need to, at some point today, go to this place or go to that place. And kind of talking about, like, the challenge of, like, does he spend those to end up, like, in a more valuable place where he's likely to get a good fare, or to go someplace where he needed to run an errand. But kind of the idea that there had been no autonomy and now there's a limited kind of this little toehold, if you will, ability to kind of insert that, and that was really weighing on the driver, like how much control do I have in this system. And I mean, there are other aspects of the control. It's like, does he have control over what price he charges? Well, that's not really an AI thing, but it's another thing that kind of comes from control from the top. Computers kind of controlling people almost as extensions of the computer, whether it's the driving services like Lyft, or people filling boxes at Amazon. I think those are both examples where where kind of autonomy has been eroded to the point where someone is mostly answering to a machine. That in all cases you have kind of the control from the top being leveraged as widely and deeply as possible through technology. Kind of as we scale up. How many stores can we control? How many boxes can we ship? It's like how big can we make this single entity? And we're not seeing much limit on how big things are growing right now. Address it kind of in two ways, because I feel like there's kind of this traditional way in which kind of when an organization gets bigger and there's more control from the top, that people at the leaves, the majority of people kind of have less and less control. Whether there's some of that mediated by whether they're talking directly to a computer or talking to people who are talking to a computer, but the information systems kind of allow that scale to happen. But there's kind of another aspect, when you think about kind of control. So, when I think about like some of the things I do on a regular basis on the computer, like I'll do a search with Google, or I'll go consume some media, video or something, and I feel like I'm in control. Like I feel like I had this question, I'm going to go ask it. I feel like I'm interested in this particular topic, I'm going to go watch some videos about it. But what we see is kind of this influence that kind of comes back the other direction, right? Whether it's something obvious in the form of ads or something that's a little more subtle in terms of like how are the search results ordered, or what kind of does the system think I'm going to be interestable in watching kind of my next video, and you see kind of this control that's kind of coming back the other way, and we see aspects of that. From the recent election where the system is trying its best to control each individual person. So I think that there's a real challenge there, because when we have systems that are able to kind of whisper in the ear of each person individually and kind of characterize each person individually, it's really hard to know you're being controlled, and it's really hard to document and understand at scale what's happening when it's not some big event that everyone saw, but everyone's own kind of private experience.
It sounds to me like the dynamic features of that system are making this a particular moment in history, right? Because this notion of the feedback loop of the paradigm or the system that is imposed on the individual is something that we've had different versions of, whether that's developed through the printing press and development of higher levels of literacy. But this is a dynamic, interactive system where it's a much faster developing relationship.
Yeah. I mean, it is interesting. I mean, I think that the idea that that the internet is at my beck and call, right? As I can ask my friend the internet the answer to this question, a lot faster than I can ask one of my other friends. And it's learning enough about me that it kind of understands my use of language and knows when I use a word that could mean one of three things. It already kind of knows the answer, and it remembers what I was looking at 2 days ago, so it kind of recalls that for me. I think that we are at a place in history where we see kind of more and more engagement with the computer and less engagement with other people. And I don't see that slowing down. I mean, it seems like everything we're looking at, all the trends are accelerating.
It's an interesting tension between the cult of the individual and the ways in which the individual's agency is undermined by that very system.
Right, you're exactly right. Yeah, I mean, I think Google search is an interesting example of that, right? I mean, I feel incredibly empowered to be able to go and search for things, and just even reflecting back on when I was in high school trying to build a robot, right? It's like I had so little information at my fingertips. I didn't know someone who had done it before. Like I didn't have kind of access to the information. And today there's just no lack of access to information. So I think, things like this where we're aggregating kind of, intelligence of other people at scale, whether it's a Google search or whether it's, going and shopping at Amazon. I mean, it's like what I love about Amazon is being able to very quickly sort out, what's the thing that's going to be, that best fits what I need. What are the things that other people have had good experience with? Because Amazon's done a pretty good job of aggregating together what everyone's experience has been, and hopefully removing some of the spam from that. And it made the role of the salesperson obsolete. But my experience with the salesperson was the salesperson didn't necessarily know as much as I wanted him or her to know. So I feel kind of empowered to be able to have this input into my decision making, or to be able to answer questions at a moment's notice, right? It's like, I have, it's at 10 p.m. Well, the store is closed. Well, I mean, the internet has not closed.
Yes.
I can do this anytime I want, on demand. And it gets closer and closer, right? To today I'm like, never very far from my computer, never, far at all from my phone. I'm sure I'll be, wearing glasses that get me even closer as time moves forward. I think I kind of touched on that a little bit earlier, kind of the ways that, when you think of, undermining, it's like, the way that I think I'm in control, but I'm being influenced without necessarily realizing it. And I think that, when we look at kind of the democratic process, being undermined, we see as kind of systems are trying to increasingly manipulate people, and kind of undermine their agency. The way to increase attention from a person is to get them upset about something. And we kind of see this happening, right? Whether it's YouTube's kind of, polarization of people into kind of getting ever more agitated as you kind of follow the chain of recommendations, to something that, is ever more salient and you're ever more engaged about, and you want to like tell other people about because it's gotten you upset about something. And, whether that's a true thing it's upset you about or not, is kind of immaterial. It's trying to keep you on site as long as possible and accrue revenue for advertising. Or whether we look at the recent election where if what you're trying to do is swing the electoral college, and that's your goal, it's okay if part of that involved polarizing a lot of people. If that's not part of if you're if what you're optimizing for is the win, there are a lot of things that can happen along the way that might be not ethical, that might be challenging, or even cause problems to our ability to govern ourselves, or be able to have good conversations. I mean, I go back to like my first impression of machine autonomy, which was the original Star Wars, when I was 10, and kind of the idea that here were these two things that seemed to be treated a little bit as second-class citizens, but had their own goals and were kind of doing things that seemed like a cool thing, right? They were kind of the underdog. I wanted to root for them, right? And you kind of see this thing over and over again, kind of in media, kind of the idea of the autonomous humanoid, or maybe not quite humanoid, but robot with its own goals that might be not being treated quite right, and kind of the sympathy, the empathy we can have for this thing. And I think that it really misses the mark of of where we've been and where we're going. I mean, when we think about like ways that things can be autonomous, the things that we see today, right? So the idea that that YouTube was trying to maximize the amount of time I would spend there, but the system had some autonomy on like how to do that, right? It's like work, try any sort of patterns you can find to keep Randy on the site as long as you can, and clicking the ads. And that ends up, turning into these things like, let's, get Randy increasingly agitated so he wants to stay here. So there are these things where when the system has autonomy, it's interesting, kind of, well, what comes from that? So you're asking specifically where are places where the autonomy is good?
Where it might be perceived, where you might perceive it as valuable.
What does the autonomy mean? They're decisions I kind of don't want to be bothered with, right? So like, to what extent am I happy that Google has algorithms that were able to effectively look at a million things related to what I'm searching for and give me what it thinks are the best. I mean, that it seems to mostly work well for me. Like I enjoy that. That it however it was doing that.
So various.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? We have kind of this long history of delegating decisions, right? Our government is based on that. We're delegating to decisions, at three levels of the government, kind of federal, state, and local. And you kind of watch the ways that sometimes the people you've delegated to are operating in your interests, and sometimes they're not, right? So sometimes you have kind of this corrupting influence of money, and I feel like when a system's making decisions, and it's making decisions in a way that you don't want to kind of dig into, we can call that a form of autonomy. And then the question, I guess, becomes like, well, who's it making decisions for the benefit of? Is it trying to educate me at YouTube, or is it trying to maximize my ad revenue? And so I think that it's difficult. So I think that if you go back to the Star Wars robot idea of autonomy, it just shows even more absurd how that turns into like, well, how do you kind of deal with an autonomous system that isn't that's making some harm that needs to be adjudicated? What does it mean to put R2-D2 in jail? If R2-D2 has a brain that's electronic, it's very easy for that to have been cloned and put somewhere else. There's kind of like this. How do you punish an entity that is inherently not tied to a physical instantiation? If you look at autonomy of humans, there are a lot of ways that our autonomy is prescribed. There are a lot of things that we can't do. A lot of things that don't even we don't even want to do, because we're kind of evolved in a way to mostly work well with other people. But then there are laws that kind of say, don't do this, and here are the ways to kind of correct if something like that happens. But I think as we move into machine decision making and machine autonomy, what's driving the machines, the way they're making the decisions, is so different from what happened, the way people do, that the existing ways we think of that, are going to have to evolve. today, in the news we have, cars in self-driving mode, Tesla cars in self-driving mode that crash. And there are these interesting fingers going back and forth. It's like, is it Tesla claims that it's a person giving the system not touching the steering wheel often enough, and yet you look at it and kind of look at kind of how it's advertised and kind of how a user's interaction would be. I think that it's the idea that an autonomous system by itself is ever responsible for something, I don't think, it feels a little bit like kind of a fiction that doesn't make sense. I mean, it's like, we have ever more complicated tools, and today we have cases where the tool maker is negligent or the tool user is negligent, and it's going to get more and more complicated as things move forward. But I think that's there isn't an easy recipe. Mm-hmm. We're going to have to deal with this as it comes. So if general artificial intelligence means some entity that's setting its own goals, and able to act on that without any person oversight, I don't know what general AI means. But if it means the fairy tale robot, I think that what we, I guess the question fundamentally is, well, what will it be used for? And as we see kind of the trends today, the most intelligent thing isn't going to be coming from some lab that put the last piece in and suddenly this thing sprung to life. It's going to be evolved in a place like Google, and it's going to be used in the service probably of making money, and it's not going to push back on the trends we're seeing. It's going to just increase that. Now, if you worry about the situation where a general AI can be kind of smart enough to outsmart the people who built it and created it, I don't think we're close to that. Could it happen? I mean, I think we don't know how far we are from that, but on the day that there's something that can think in general terms on par with the human, we're a few months away from it being smarter and ever more so. The ways that the ways that we see kind of in sometimes almost scary ways that autonomous systems or the intelligent systems can work together. We have armies of semi-autonomous cars that are building together like a database of what are the roads like. So kind of every car can learn from what one car learned. So we have kind of almost spooky we kind of these bigger systems can scale and work together in ways that we kind of humans are kind of stuck talking to each other like we are right now, and it's kind of very slowly kind of moving ideas across, and machines are not limited in that way. So I think that as if we start to get towards the edge of machine being kind of at that level, it's hard to say kind of where that goes, but it's going to happen. If we get to that point, it will happen faster than we're prepared to cope, I think. I think that the kind of the way the world is built right now, that money is attached to power, and money comes from kind of things of economic utility and large. I think that some of these things need to change. I think that our values need to change somewhat. I mean, I think that we need to put human dignity, as and on a higher pedestal than we do today. I think that, as we reevaluate the values that we operate by, I think we need to, look deeply at, the things that we are building, the technologies we're building, like how do they, contribute towards or detract from those values. I think, I hope that we, increase our conversations about that.